What's happening in the world today? For starters, the aluminum industry is turning green. This shift towards greener operations isn't just a trend, it's a necessity. Aluminum production is notoriously energy-intensive, contributing a substantial amount to global CO2 emissions. But change is on the horizon. Aluminum makers are planning to ramp up their production of low-carbon aluminum by 10% in the coming year. This increase in production will have a significant impact on the industry's carbon footprint, potentially reducing emissions by 13 million tons. That's no small feat when you consider the sheer volume of aluminum produced worldwide. The rise of low-carbon aluminum isn't happening in a vacuum, though. It's a direct response to pressure from governments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But it's not just about complying with regulations. The shift towards greener aluminum production is also being driven by demand from various industries, particularly automotive and construction. Companies in these sectors are actively seeking out climate-friendly supplies of aluminum as they strive to demonstrate their green credentials to consumers. In fact, some companies like BMW and Volkswagen have already started using aluminum produced with solar power or through new technologies that eliminate CO2 emissions. While most companies don't disclose the amount of low-carbon material they buy, the shift to green aluminum appears to be more cost-effective than other ways of reducing emissions. Many aluminum companies have made significant investments in low-carbon technologies, which has led to lower prices for low-carbon products. Despite this, producers are still able to sell some of their low-carbon output at higher prices under long-term contracts. Looking ahead, the global supply of low-carbon aluminum is expected to continue to rise, with Europe leading the way thanks to the use of hydropower. The plentiful supply of low-carbon primary aluminum and recycled material will likely keep green premiums relatively low in the coming years. However, we should note that limited movement of supplies between regions could lead to deficits in high-demand areas. And while the market for ultra-low carbon aluminum, produced with less than 2 tons of carbon emissions per ton of metal, remains strong due to limited supply, the industry's overall trajectory is clear. The future of aluminum is green, so look out for more climate-friendly products in the automotive and construction industries. Meanwhile, in South Korea, the central bank forecasts a slowdown in inflation. Now, this might sound like a routine statement, but it's an issue that has been causing some concern among economists and policymakers. Let's delve into this a bit more. The Bank of Korea, the country's central bank, has been closely monitoring the inflation rates in the country. They predict that consumer inflation will remain around 5% for some time before it gradually starts to ease. This might seem like good news, but it's not that simple, is it? There's a caveat. The bank warns that the uncertainty surrounding factors such as oil prices, foreign exchange rates, domestic public utility fares, and economic growth could affect the pace at which prices slow. Now, these are all elements that are somewhat unpredictable and can greatly influence the economy. Inflation is a tricky beast to tame. It's influenced by a multitude of factors, some of which are difficult to predict. The bank's governor emphasizes this high level of uncertainty in predicting future inflation. He cites factors such as the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and expected domestic public utility fare increases in the year 2023. The bank's latest inflation projections forecast a slowdown to 4.2% in the first half of 2023 and further easing to 3.1% in the second half of the year. Now, these are just projections and things could change. The bank's medium-term inflation target is around 2%. This is a significant drop from the current inflation rate, and achieving this target will require careful management of the economy and a favorable global economic climate. On a related note, the Abu Dhabi Future Energy Company, also known as Mazda, plans to develop a 150 megawatt solar power project in Angola. This project aims to provide renewable energy to 90,000 homes and support economic growth. This is an example of how global economic developments can influence the economy of individual countries. Inflation is a complex issue that affects all aspects of the economy. It influences the cost of living, the value of money, and the overall economic health of a country. The Bank of Korea's prediction of a slowdown in inflation is a positive sign, but it's important to remember that this is just a prediction. The actual rate of inflation will depend on a variety of factors, some of which are difficult to predict. So while the bank's forecast is encouraging, it's not a guarantee. There's a lot of uncertainty in the global economy right now, and this could have a significant impact on South Korea's inflation rate. So keep an eye on South Korea's economy in the coming months. It's an interesting case study of how a country manages inflation in a turbulent global economy. And remember, the economy is a complex system that is influenced by a multitude of factors. So while predictions are useful, they are not set in stone. The future is always uncertain, and that's what makes it so fascinating. Finally, over in the oil markets, prices have fallen due to looming recession fears. This is a story that has been developing for some time now. We're seeing global economic concerns having a clear impact on oil prices, with the price per barrel dropping significantly. This drop in prices isn't a slight dip, but a considerable fall. On December 16, 2023, oil prices fell by over $2 per barrel. This was due to concerns of a looming recession and aggressive measures taken by central banks in Europe and North America to fight inflation. Brent crude futures, a major international trading classification of sweet light crude oil, settled at $79.04 per barrel, marking a decrease of 2.4%. Meanwhile, West Texas Intermediate futures, a grade of crude oil used as a benchmark in oil pricing, fell to $74.29 per barrel. These figures represent a significant shift in the oil market and are indicative of the broader economic concerns at play. Central banks, including the US Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, and the European Central Bank, have played a significant role in this scenario. These institutions have raised interest rates, indicating their commitment to combating inflation. However, this hasn't been without its consequences. The aggressive inflation-fighting measures have stoked fears of a looming recession, which in turn has caused oil prices to drop. In other words, the steps taken to curb inflation have inadvertently led to a decrease in the value of oil. Interestingly, this fall in oil prices doesn't tell the whole story. While the overall trend has been a decrease in prices, there have been brief periods where prices rebounded. This was notably seen after the US Energy Department announced the repurchase of 3 million barrels of domestic crude oil for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This announcement led to a temporary increase in prices, showing that even in a climate of falling prices, there can be moments of recovery. However, these moments have been short-lived, and the overall trend remains a decrease in oil prices. The shutdown of the Canada to US Keystone Pipeline has supported heavy crude benchmarks but had no impact on lighter global benchmarks. This goes to show that different factors can have varying effects on different areas of the oil market, so economic concerns continue to impact global oil prices. This situation is a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of global economies and markets. It illustrates how decisions made by central banks can have far-reaching effects, influencing not only the economies of their respective countries, but also the global oil market. As we continue to navigate these challenging economic times, it will be interesting to see how oil prices continue to respond to these global economic concerns. Will there be a recovery, or will prices continue to fall? Only time will tell.